I'm Mary Burley, a co-chair of the Connecting Young Nebraskans group. CYN is an affiliated fund of the Nebraska Community Foundation and a statewide network designed to empower young Americans to connect, lead, and shape the future of our communities and state. CYN's network includes more than 800 individuals from across the state and have traditionally come together at our annual summit. Like all things 2020, this group has had to pivot, and this year's summit will be held virtually on October 22nd with the theme of Change Starts at Home. The network was built to connect people, and there's no better time to connect and engage meaningful than now. CYN feels the pain of the nation is feeling and hear the voices calling for change. After all, change does start at home. We are committed to helping create an inclusive Nebraska where everyone can live without fear, fully participate in society, and feel at home in their own communities. All Voices at the Table events are generously supported by the Nebraska Community Foundation. Our facilitator today is probably one of my all-time favorite people, Carlos Barcinas. Carlos is a speaker, coach, and facilitator with I Choose Purple consulting firm. He focuses on intercultural leadership development. He has lived in Nebraska since 1994 and has worked with people from all over the world. Carlos has assisted immigrants transitioning to their new home, has instructed English classes, citizenship classes, and has expanded to leadership development opportunity for all walks of life. For the last 2 years, Carlos has worked with community leaders from across Nebraska, creating a dialogue about diversity, equality, and inclusion. The combination of those three topics work to enhance a community's intercultural development. Welcome, Carlos, and you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, very excited to have you all. It's always, to me, in this 2020 era, I'm a people person. So if I hung out with you before, you know that I'm like, my bubble is like very small and I got to talk and I got to be in touch and say, hey, just, I need that connection live. So this is my fix of hanging out with people. As many of you probably are enjoying this as well. And for those that are introverts, you're probably enjoying it too, because you get to be like, hey, this is cool. I've been doing this all this time. So I'm going to ask you today, as we have this conversation, I'm going to switch some things around because we do have a little bit more time with less people. But I'm going to invite you to, if you've been, raise your hand if this is the first time you're joining us for No Voices at the Table. Cool. Awesome. Awesome. So we have a few new people. I have a slide Google Doc in the chat that you feel free to use. You don't have to use it, but it'll guide our conversation. And that's where, as we divide into groups, you'll be able to chat, write some notes down. But one of the things that I really hope that we get out of this today is we've been having these conversations, but now I want to make sure that you continue to lead with something that you say, hey, what can I do? And how do I put this into practice? So I have developed my own model of, not really much developed as much as I just gave it a fancy name so I can remember what I'm doing, but a way of how do we continue to grow and how do we continue to interact with difficult conversations and uncomfortable conversations. So today let's get started with, if you go to your Google Doc, I have a slide on page 9 that is just a moment of silence. We're just going to take 30 minutes to kind of focus, center yourselves. And I changed actually, thank you for those that are clicking on click here for self-care ideas. Feel free to revisit this document. It's for my friends at SparkX. But it's, we all need to take care of ourselves. So as we take about 30 seconds of silence and just focus on, hey, we're going to have some good conversation. Start stepping into what's happening, what you're hearing, what you would like to explore. But self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. And that's very important in the work that we're all doing in our communities. So take a deep breath with me and let's just have a moment of silence. All right. It's always good, right? In my house, there's been so much going on in eventful the last couple of days. Um, so it was a good reminder for me and for my family. As many of you have heard me talk about our big family, we do have a small army, 4 children, 3 dogs, 2 cats, a bunch of fish. And unfortunately, Becky, our hedgehog passed away about 2 days ago. We had a hedgehog that lived with us for probably 6 or 7 years, which apparently for a hedgehog, that's a long time. So the last 3 days of his life, we gave him water, and um, we have told the kids, this is coming up. This might happen. Might not make it another night. So get ready. We had some tears that day. Then the next morning they come from the school, and my wife says, "All right, let's go check him out." And he's passed away. So we ended up burying him in our front flower bed, where my wife had a bunch of flower bed and had a little um, funeral ceremony. My parents came by. My sister came along. But one of the things that we were talking was, what a good reminder of life and the opportunities that we have in life. And with my kiddos, the younger ones, they're 6 and 7. My 13-year old's like, oh my goodness, stop crying. It's not a big deal, right? But my that was her way of dealing with it. But my little ones, we're sad, and it just made us think about, enjoying every moment that we have. And sometimes we have so many things that seem so trivial at times, but sometimes can be so petty at times. So with this, in your communities, in your conversations, uh, one of the reasons I call I'm the purple man, or why I like purple, why I choose purple, it's because to me purple represents, it's your reds and your blues, not necessarily politically, but it can be, right? But your blue, purple is a secondary color, and you have to be intentional and meeting or blending these two colors to get purple. So if you grab something on your desk, whatever you have on your desk, grab something that you can put in your hand, that you can actually like squeeze, or just put something in your hand. Hi, Rhonda. Welcome back. Good to have you. We just got started. But in this conversation, one of the things that I've struggled in this journey is, how do I engage in the things that matter to me in a way that is productive? So think of whatever you have in your hand as your blues and your reds, your values, what you hold dear, what is important to you. For some of you, might be your religion, your political affiliation, your race, your skin color, your experience. So you have it. So clench it tight and put it near your heart. And this is what you won't. You don't give way on this. This is your truth. This is what people, when they say something against it, it gets a reaction out of you. Those are your values, right? Now, in this conversation, now what I'm going to ask you to do is extend your hand and put it in front of you, palm up, and then open your palm and and release it. One of the things that I've had a hard time explaining is this simple truth of, now it's simple to me, I guess. You still get to have your values, your point of views, what matters to you. But now you're not clinching it to the point that you're ready to fight about it, that you're ready to just not listen and not engage. So as we engage in these conversations the rest of the day, you continue to hold your values, your truths, what is important to you, but it's with that hand open where we can still have a conversation. So let's get on to the next step. And Camry, I'm gonna introduce you here in a little bit, but before we go into that, we're gonna go and do 3 rounds of getting to know who is in the room. I'm going to give you a couple minutes, and as many of you know, this goes pretty fast. There's never enough time in small groups. So you're going to be with 2 or 3 people. I'm on slide number 11. And before we go to that, some of you have done this and some of you have not done this. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. If you see on page 10, if you're new to this, I want you to make a list in 30 seconds of the things that are identities that you identify with. Okay, so for example, I can say I'm a straight brown Christian male. Those are my identities, or a father, or Republican, or Democrat, whatever as many identities as you can. So 30 seconds, write that in a piece of paper. Ready, say 30 seconds. As many identities as you can. Need some cheesy music in the background. All right, you got 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 11. Let's try this. 5 seconds. Whoa. All right, now that you have your list, now we're going to go into 3 different rounds. In these 3 different rounds, you have 3, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. And you're going to introduce yourself in round 1 using 3 to 5 words from your list and share why they are important to you. Remember, you only have 3 minutes, so you got to just go. Some of you have a room of 2, so you'll be fine. And then we'll come back and do a next round. So give me a thumbs up. You ready? Here we go. I'm gonna send you to rooms. Introduce yourself with 3 to 5 words from your list and why they are important to you. And here we go. How about I unmute myself? Hello, everyone. If you're watching this recording, one of the things that we're doing right now is getting to know who is in the room and exploring a little bit more about our identity and who we are. So one of the exercises that you can do is in a piece of paper, write down as many identifiers as you have for you, take a couple minutes, and then choose 3 to 5 of those descriptors. And next time you introduce yourself, you can use those. So I use the example of, my name is Carlos Barcenas, and I'm a immigrant, Christian, straight male, and those are some of my identities. So exploring identity is good as we start this conversation on race and how do we grow our intercultural competence of knowing how to work with things with similarities and with differences. Welcome back. I found my music.
That was a horrible choice.
All right,
I got you next time. I got you next time.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I know. All right. So hopefully you had enough time. Because probably you didn't. But we're going to go to round 2, and you're going to introduce yourself using 2 to 3 words from your list that many people might not get to see or know. So, for example, one of my identities is a musician. Not a lot of people get to see that part because I don't just don't get to see it. So another one is I'm an okay cook. That's another identity. I'm an okay cook. So that's another one. And so we're gonna send you back to rooms, Dale. Welcome back. So whoever is in the room with Dale, you're gonna have to give him some heads up of, hey, what are we doing? But introduce yourself using 2 to 3 words from your list that many people might not get to see. Let me do the room. All right, here we go. And now what we're doing is everyone is sharing 2 to 3 words from the list that people usually don't get to see. So what identities are special to you, important to you that some might not get to see? For example, I mentioned I'm a musician. I enjoy cooking. Another one is my political affiliation. I don't really put that out there either. So it's good to know what are my identities that no one else gets to see that often. We'll be back. All right. Welcome back. So we're going to go to a 3rd round. Did you have enough time this time around? Or yeah, all right. So last time, introduce yourself using 2 to 3 words from your list that you are very proud of. So you're going to have, again, 3 minutes. What are 2 or 3 that you are very proud of? So, mine, I would say I'm very proud of being a dad and a husband, and I'm very proud of being a Mexican-born citizen. So those are very important to me. 3 more minutes. Were you with the same people? No? Good. All right. Wanted to make sure. Okay. So here we go. We are going to go into 3 more minutes. Introduce yourself using 2 to 3 words from your list that you are very proud of. See you shortly. Welcome back. I try to look for music on my phone, but hey, I'm getting to that age where I don't know how to program my VCR anymore. So, welcome back. A couple people, how was that? You can feel free to mute yourself. And how was it? Anything you want to share? What you learned?
I just want to say I got to meet someone new, Mariah, and I am so encouraged by how many new faces that are on the call today. It makes me so happy. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you. All connecting young Nebraskans again in the effort of, or in the spirit of connecting young Nebraskans, even though they have a boundary of 20-ish to 40-ish, we're gonna push those boundaries because I need to push those boundaries. Dale and I are the youngest ones here, probably. But hey, let's get going in this conversation. So, Camry, are you ready to jump in and have a conversation? And I'm going to switch things around. So, here's what we're going to do. Usually, we have a conversation and we'll still have a conversation. But we're going to do an activity at the same time. And well, first of all, let me introduce you. And help me out. How do you pronounce your name?
Okay, so I always tell people my first name, I was really named after the car, Camry. My letters were just switched around, so it's a K and an I instead of a C and a Y. And then my last name is Silv, like the color silver without the So if you remember those two things, you'll always say my name right.
Camry Silv. Well,
There you go.
welcome. It's good to have you. And let me move my things around here, but it's really good to have you. We've been able to chat a couple times, and Camry is a New Orleans, Louisiana native. She attended the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, where she received her bachelor's degree in broadcasting and a minor in English. She now lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and is working as the morning news reporter and multimedia journalist at Theta Sorority Incorporated and the National Association of Black Journalists. When she isn't working, Camry enjoys doing community service with spending quality time with her two dogs, Stitch and Teddy, and cooking authentic Cajun and Creole meals. So, that's thank you again. It's just exciting. Um, I'm giving you full permission to push back the question to say, hey, that's not right, or that is wrong, or um, we're going to have a virtual coffee conversation as if we knew each other from the last 10 years. How about that? So the next thing we're going to do, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but for you that are, as you get ready for the next thing, I'll jump into slide 12 here shortly. So Camry, we started this conversation when the unfortunate death of George Floyd. Obviously that sparked a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of woes, uncertainty. Um, and some felt like 2020 has been the year that I've said white people more than anything, any other year in my life. So I had white friends saying, well, I didn't know this happened that often, right? I had friends that said, well, I've seen it happen. I've mentioned that I have not watched the video because before that, with my black friends and people of color, I could see a video similar to that on a weekly basis. Now, I'm trying to keep my biases in check and not say all bad cops or this is something, pulling the race card. But something that we haven't given enough attention has been police brutality and black lives in the nation. And maybe we don't see it as much in Nebraska, not because it doesn't happen, but maybe because it's hard to raise the issue so that it's comfortable to talk about without saying, yeah, but he was a criminal. Yeah, but this or that. So let's start there. Give me your thoughts of how do we approach this conversation? And people are saying, how do we approach the race conversation with a black leader? No worries, with a black
Yes, okay.
female, with a black female, with a black professional, what people have questions and we don't know how to approach it. So give me your thoughts on everything I just gave you.
So me personally, I went to school most of my life in predominantly white schools. I did. Now don't get me wrong, I had black friends and whatnot, but the majority of the time I was a minority. And so I had it ever since I was younger, the questions. For me personally, and this is just me, I appreciate the questions because that shows me that you're trying to learn, that you're trying to educate yourselves. But what I also will say is that if you are not of that particular group, let that be race, let that be gender, let that be political affiliation, you must do your own research on yourself. I'm sorry, for yourself. And so for us in the Black community, when we have these certain questions that come about that we know are Googleable, it's a little like, well, why didn't you look this up before you came and asked me? Not that I don't want to have this conversation with you, because I love having this conversation with any and everybody. But I want to see you learn. And the only way you're going to learn is if you do that research for yourself. So I think people need to stray away from, well, how do I ask this question? And guess what? Just ask it. However that person responds to you is their version or their way of responding, but that doesn't mean what you asked is quote unquote wrong. Because Carlos, I could ask you a question and not know how to ask it, and you might take it as me asking wrong. And then what you're going to do after that is correct me. So I think people need to open up their minds and spaces to that correction and not take that as, well, I can't have conversations with people because of this reason. No, yes, you can, because the conversation is A and B and A and B and A and B. So I think people need to, not stray away from having someone correct you. That way, the next time you want to have a conversation, we can have it, and it's totally fine. Or if you want to have that same conversation with someone else, you know how to approach it, if that makes sense,
Yeah, and I think that's where knowing what our identities are, and you're in the communication business, right? So hey, it's simple, it's just A and B. Um, but when it hasn't, we were talking about identities and this concept of intersectionality. All of you wrote different identities that you identify with. So in the last in the last week, 5 days, I've been in situations where I sat down with mainly men. And we're just in a casual, and we just happen to be in the same room, and we're gonna be there for a little bit, 4 or 5 hours. I just picked up something that I'm doing on the side, and I get to be around people. And all of a sudden, when there's quiet times, out of the blue, I get, um, so this Black Lives Matter thing. And I'm just like, okay, why is the conversation coming up? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm of color? And also, it goes right into politics. Well, if you're a Republican, well, if the Democrats, so it's when we're going to have this conversation, I agree with you. We have to be able to just ask and have the conversation, but we also have to know where we're coming from. So many times I get let's have the conversation, but I'm going to tell you that you're wrong because I see you as, well, you're a brown man that probably voted for Obama and you probably hate Trump. And it's like, well, you already put so many identities together that you are assuming everything that is happening. In your case, being in the communication business in rural in Nebraska, and for some of us that come from smaller towns or bigger towns than Omaha and Lincoln, rural might be Omaha and Lincoln. I came in from a town that had just tons of people, so Lincoln and Omaha were rural to me. But in rural Nebraska, being a Black woman, do you run into that? Or how do you deal with that? Do people see you, but they see you as this other identities tied to their political affiliation or tied to, and again, it doesn't. This conversation is not you're speaking for every Black person. You're speaking about your experience. So what has been your experience? When people see you, do they see Camry, a young professional, a reporter, a female, or tell me, share with me, share with us.
So, I don't know if you guys heard him, but I am originally from New Orleans. So coming from New Orleans, Louisiana to Lincoln, Nebraska was it hit me. It was like, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm gonna share a little experience that we had. So when I moved here with my dad, who is a Black male, and we went into Walmart, and he said, I haven't seen one Black person since I've been in here. And I said, Dad, me neither. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And then we drove through the Popeyes drive-through. And he said, Camry, everybody that's working in there is white. And I said, Dad, I know. So that was just a little funny instance that we had, but that was my culture shock that happened. And I like how you said I'm not speaking for every Black person, because what I think is the most important thing is that people realize just because I have had a Black experience doesn't mean the girl next to me who's a Black woman has had that same Black experience. And I think people need to erase, and I'm sorry if you guys hear like a weird sound, it's my dogs that are playing. I promise they're not fighting, they're just playing. Anyways, I think people need to take away, sorry. Guys, please. I think people need to take away that word Black and just use the word experience. Because for me, like I said, I did go to predominantly white schools my entire life. When someone sees me, you know, outside of work, I'm wearing these huge hoops. You're going to see the huge hoops. You're going to see, you know, and people, when I open my mouth, are surprised on how I speak. And they don't expect the voice that comes out of my mouth to match my look, my persona, my natural kinky curly hair. They don't expect my voice to come out of, you know, myself. And so my experience here in Nebraska has not been what I expected. And that's in a good way. I did expect to get some racial slurs thrown at me, or some nasty emails because I am on air, or some crazy looks and whatnot. And I haven't gotten that. And that's not something that, like I said, was expected. I grew up in the South, so I know exactly how racism looks. I know exactly how it looks when it's not crystal clear. I know when someone is saying things in a, what's the word? In a, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but in a way where they don't want you to see it right then and there, but you know that it's there. And that hasn't happened. And what I can speak about for the Lincoln community, now I have gone to Omaha every once in a while, and I have gone to other rural places in Nebraska just visiting quite shortly. But as far as Lincoln can say, I always tell people there's a community here in Lincoln, and that sense of community that's here in Lincoln knows how to stick together. There may be, you know, differences and separations in some parts, but as far as the entire community, I would say it's here. And that, like, again, this is my Black experience. So I personally, being in Nebraska, and I've only been in Nebraska for a little bit over a year, I haven't had those instances pop up. And again, like I say, it was a surprise to me that I didn't. And I don't know if that's because I don't know why I haven't had those instances, but I'm not upset about it at all, you know?
Right. No, I think it's again very important that we've all had a different experience, right? And maybe it looks different. So something that it's good to hear your experience, because we've had other speakers in our panel that have said, you know, I come from the South, or I come from these places where you can see the racial divide, and coming to Nebraska is the first time I was called a nigger. So it's a different experience, right? And same thing with me. Something that you spoke about was the sense of community. Now, do you think your experience from coming from the South, where you got to see things differently, and now you're in Nebraska where you had an expectation but you gotten involved in the community and gotten to know people. You know, if your personality helps, you know, because you're out there. You how do how here's what I've experienced: the Nebraska Nice. And again, I think there's two Nebraska Nice that I have found out. You have the Nebraska Nice that we are a community that pulls together. We are a state that pulls together. Hey, we're good at what we do. We, you know, bleed red. We love the Huskers, which they're going to start playing in October. That's what I heard. And we just right sense of community. But then with my being an immigrant, I have also experienced the Nebraska Nice that has this racial tones of you're welcome, but not welcome here. You're welcome, but you're not part of us. Oh, we would like you to be here, but you don't have a voice. Now, that's tricky to navigate. And all of you that are in the call today, I think I know most of you, but all of you have permission to push back and say, Carlos, this is a conversation for all of us. I've been, and I've shared this before, I have the opportunity to work with Nebraska Community Foundation, great peeps, great folks, connecting young Nebraskans, where I think that race and skin color matter in this instance. If I went to rural Nebraska, this is my experience point of view. If I went to many places in rural Nebraska and just walked in and said, hey, I'm here I would like to work with you with diversity, inclusion, race, and equity. My name is Carlos Barcelos. Doors are going to close. However, if, you know, my friend Carrie or Jonathan or Rhonda or Dale would send, if I would go to many of those communities and say, hey, I'm here and Jonathan sent me, because they know Jonathan, doors would open. Because they know that I'm working with the Nebraska Community Foundation or connecting in Nebraska, you know, I think it matters. There is a racial divide. So how can we get better? You said, you know, just ask the question. Just let's engage in this conversation. I've struggled with stop seeing me just as a Black person or a person of color. When things at the national level happen, don't give me a but. Let's talk about, you know, and I have friends that are in law enforcement. I love what they do. I respect what they do. Thank you for, you know, and all those that are in law enforcement that might see this video later on. Thank you for the work that you're doing, because it is very important. And it is such a key piece of our communities. One of the things that I want to highlight is when George Floyd happened, I don't know that I got it as people don't want the police anymore. I saw it as a moment to say, Black people have been talking about this for a long time, and we just want higher accountability, not for good cops, for bad cops. Now, that doesn't say that we're saying, and make sure that we let all the criminals go. No, we understand that there is a criminal side and right or wrong. We understand that. So what would you say to communities that are majority white, that are saying, we want Black people to come to our communities? What would you say they could do to start these talks about what's going at the national level? I'm giving you a lot. It's a loaded question.
Okay. So I want to go back to what you said about that but word. Because maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I can't remember when it was, but I did a story with a Nebraska woman after Bill LB 1060, that's what the number was, but it was the hair discrimination bill that was not passed. And I spoke to a woman who was working in Omaha. She lost her job after she stopped wearing wigs and weaves and whatnot, and she shaved all her head off, and then she started to grow her natural curls, and she ended up dreading up her hair. Well, after she cut her hair, her old boss, and this came out of her mouth, her old boss said, when are you getting your old hair back? And so it took her back and was like, I'm not getting it back. This is my hair now. This is what it is. Long story short, after some months, she realized that they started to cut her hours after she cut her hair. And they eventually fired her. Now, mind you, she was working in a higher position. She was making like great sales and whatnot. And she deeply, deeply, deeply felt, because she said there was no other reason, that she was let go because she didn't fit the image of the company anymore. So I say that because I posted, after I did the story with her, I posted it on Facebook. Here come what we like to call in news the Facebook trolls. So they came, and I had so many people on this story say, well, there must have been more to the story, or I don't believe her. You don't have to believe her. That's what she said happened. And just because, and I take George Floyd, you know, and that's what I had a conversation with someone the other day. I don't care if that person was white and killed a bunch of people. At that moment, he still, even though he was in the wrong, he still didn't deserve to die at the hands of police officers. So that is what that conversation is about. It's not, you know, if he was wrong or if he did everything right and whatnot. He didn't deserve to die. And that could have been anyone. That could have been an Asian woman. That could have been a white man. It doesn't matter. He didn't deserve to die. So with all that being said, I think, you know, for example, when I first came to Lincoln, we have, in the South, we have what we call, or they're like beauty supply stores, but we call them the hair store. And this is just a place that's usually not on every corner, but you have one, you know, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes or so. And you go in and you get your supplies for your hair. Well, when I moved here to Lincoln, I Googled, and all that was popping up was Sally's. And Sally's is not the beauty supply store I'm talking about. And so I'm like, gosh, I can't find the store that I need for the products that I need to put in my hair. And so I did some asking, and I had to ask other Black women here that I know. I said, well, where are the beauty supply stores? They told me there's one. There's one in Lincoln, and in New Orleans, there's about 40. So when you want to welcome those people into your communities, you have to have the things that they need. And for a lot of Black kids, or just Black professionals, whatever, they need to have hair products that they can go in and find. If you can go into your a store and find the shampoo that you use and the conditioner that you use, I should be able to go into that same store and find the shampoo that I use and the conditioner that I use. And the same goes for everything. If I want to, I don't know, for me, if you have a community that you're trying to make inviting and you want those minorities to come there, have things that are true to them, that are important to them, that matter to them. I cannot come into your community and not have what I need, not have what I want, not have what was a part of my life before I got there. And I think, you know, I was doing a story one time, I think I might have been in Hickman, and I got lost, okay? I got lost, and my GPS was not helping me, and I was lost. And there was that part of me inside, and I was like, I am scared to go up to someone's door in the middle of a cornfield and ask them for help. Shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. And I feel like, you know, some people on this call, I feel like you guys would have never second guessed going up to that door, knocking on the door and asking for help. And so I feel like it just needs to, what is the word? And not that a rural community can't be inviting, but it has to be understood that it's going to be taken like that. Like, it's not. And you have to, and unfortunately, that's just how it is. You're going to have to prove that it is. How that can be done, I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer for that, but I think having the things that are important to young minorities, having the things that are a part of their lives. For example, if they're, and not to be stereotypical, but if there is a place that they can find baked macaroni and cheese and some good collard greens, you know, if they can't find that, they're not going to eat, you know what I mean? So yeah, having things that are important to them in that community, I think will help.
Well, and I think, and yeah, tell me if I'm wrong, it's hard to talk about some things, because we're not saying rural communities are prejudiced or bad, but we have to face a reality that we're polarized by by the media, by social media, and I think that's a hard conversation too of what we hear. And it's really tied to what we hold near and dear. It's really tied to what is important to us. I've had the same experience, my wife being white, where I was in the middle of, I don't know, Kansas somewhere we stopped at a gas station. I went in and there was a Hindu man at the desk. There was a black guy buying some stuff. We went to the bathroom and she's like, we need to leave because she felt uncomfortable. And then the next week I was driving through rural Nebraska, running out of gas, and I saw a gas station with two white gentlemen. And again, not to stereotype, they were farmers. And, with their overalls outside the gas station, and I felt like I can't stop here. My wife being white, me being brown, and we talked about how we all have our perception, right? So to your point of, well, how then do we, those that are here, everybody that is here wants to do something. They're here because they're interested. They want to have this conversation. So as they go back to their community. When things at the national level happen, how do we have those? How do we encourage? And maybe this is a conversation for all of us of, I respect police. I think we all have our biases. We all do. But 2020 is one of the years that, I have an application on my phone that I just have to say, hey Siri, I'm getting pulled over. And automatically darkens my screen, turns my camera on, sends the location to my wife, and it starts sending and backing up my cloud. Now, people might say, Carlos, you're being a little overreactive. Really, it's not that I'm afraid of police. Here's what I'm afraid of. What I'm afraid of the day that I get pulled over, and the officer that is pulling me over, might not be a bad person, might not be a bad cop. But you know what? He just got attacked with Black Lives Matter, which you guys defund the police. He just got pulled over a couple of people who called him on things, and he's just having a rough day because the reality is we all have them. And guess what? Something happened the night before that had to do with the race, with immigrants, and now he just pulled me over. That's what I'm afraid of, not the police, right? So it is important that we all keep our biases in check. It is important that we have those conversations about there is a lot of stuff going on at the national level. We want it or not, politics plays a role into it. So let me jump into, what would you say to people that are using Black public figures, white people that are using Black public figures to send a message that aligns with their bias? Does that make sense? Or aligns with their belief? I actually had a couple of people unfriend me because I called them out on a couple of things. And one of the responses was, well, so-and-so is a Black female. So she said it. So she's more than what is the word? She's more than able to say that because she's a Black woman. And this is coming from a white person. So I pushed back a little bit about, don't use Black people that align with your beliefs to push your own agenda. What would you say about that? It says you're in the news, you're in the media. How can I don't know how to ask simple questions. I need classes from you because communication is not my thing.
I'm trying to see if you can clarify a little. So I was following you and then ask, I like know the route that you're going, but can you kind of like ask?
Well, here he goes. I'm a white person, and Camry said there is no racism and prejudice in Lincoln, Nebraska because she's never experienced it. And because she said it, and I'm a white person, I can push the agenda that we're not prejudiced or racist in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I think that goes back to saying that because you think it doesn't affect you doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So my boyfriend right now, he is living in Lafayette, Louisiana. And just last month, a Black man was shot like 11 times by police officers walking to a gas station. And every time I see another Black man on the TV screen, or I have to report about it, I think of my dad. I think of my boyfriend. I think of my uncle who is a police officer. I think about my cousin who is in the Army. I think about all these people, and I'm like, literally, that could have been him. And I already lost my mom in May. I can't afford to lose my dad. And so, and that goes back to saying, just because something doesn't affect you doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Also, what we have to stop doing is believing something that comes out of one person's mouth. And when I say that, I don't want it to be taken the wrong way, but, you know, in that instance that you just used, Carlos, if there was, let's say Beyonce, because everybody loves Beyonce. If you don't love Beyonce, you're probably like 1%. But anyways, let's use Beyonce since everybody knows who that is. Let's say Beyonce did say, you know, there is no racism in this world, and people went to posting about it because she said so. Did they do their research on this? This goes back to that educating yourself about it. Did they do their research on this? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then what you just did was wrong, because you didn't look it up. You didn't try to figure out, okay, well, why did this person say what they said? Did you ask that person directly, why did you say what you said? Did you look at sources that may have had, or may have already talked to this person or did an interview with this person and figure it out? I think celebrities have a great platform. I just did a video the other day helping somebody out at a nonprofit, and they asked me, you know, being in the quote unquote media, and we hate using that term, so I will not use that term. Being a local news reporter is what I will say. Being that I do have to use my social media in a professional way. And how do I do that while also sticking up for the things that I believe in? And I said, it combines itself, and it's the perfect place to do so. When you have a voice and you're able to illuminate people's minds on something that they may not think about, or they may not understand, and you had that platform to speak and reach people, why aren't you doing it? And I say that the same way for myself as I say for a person who isn't a person of color. If you are a celebrity, or you have a social media presence, or not even just that, if you have a book club that you have a lot of people that aren't talking about these conversations, use that ability to do so. And I also think it's sort of, it's kind of weird if you do have a platform and you aren't saying anything about it, whether you agree with it or not. To me, I think that's a little strange. It's something big that's going on and you're not saying anything about it. It's a little weird. So I always, I encourage my coworkers, and I just want to throw this out there. I am very, very thankful for the company that I work with, because I know I am working with people that care about me. They care about my fellow Black sister. They care about my fellow Black brother. They care about people. Let's just say that, because it no longer has to be about the race. It has to be about if you care about people, and they do. And I have these conversations with the people that I work with all the time. They have gone to events with me that are for, let's say, Black Lives Matter movement, or they are literally for, I remember it was Juneteenth, and I had coworkers asking me, I've never celebrated Juneteenth before. I don't know how to do it. Can I come with you? And I said, yes, please do. I want to see you want to do these things. Get involved in the things you've never done before. That's the beauty in it all. Now I feel like I'm just kind of ranting and I'm not going back to that question, but if that, hopefully that kind of answered your question. And that goes back to the whole thing with celebrities. To me, a celebrity is just a person. It's just a person with a lot more money and a lot more, let's say, clout behind their name or whatnot. And so I feel like If that person can say something about it, so can you. If you agree with that person, but agree with that person because you've done your research about it, because you've looked it up on your own. Just because somebody says something, again, doesn't make it true. Or
Yeah. So I think you did answer the question, and what I hear you saying, you're really on the next step of what I encourage people is you have to step in, you have to do some research, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, right? Here's what we're going to do, because we have a small group, and I want to make sure that I don't want to be the only one asking questions, and you can always ask me and push back. But I'm going to ask you one more question, and then from then we're going to go into a breakout room. There's going to be maybe some of 3 to 4 to 6 people in the room. Actually, let me change that. But what you're going to have a chance to do is, what I want you to do is have a conversation of come up with one question that you think we haven't asked, that you want to ask of Camry, or do you want to even ask about me? So my question for you did answer it. You did answer that, we have to step in there. We have to be willing to put yourself and experience somebody else's life. And from a listening, learning, non-judging, just experience. Get in there and experience something different. You talked about, doing a research, and also about using your voice. How do you not become the Black angry woman when you're giving your point of view? Because that's the fear that I have, that it's not that I have to manage this fine line when I'm calling somebody in or out or having this conversation of something that it matters to me. It's part of my identity, but I have to be careful because I don't feel like I have as much permission many times as some of my white counterparts to say, that is wrong, that's not what I'm talking about, because I'll become the angry Latino that I don't want them to see. So tell me, how do you not become the angry Black woman?
I think for me, anything that comes out of my mouth, it's going to come out for 2 reasons. Either what I'm saying has a purpose, or what I'm talking about, I'm passionate about. And I don't let anything that comes out of my mouth not be what I stand for, what I'm about. I was just telling somebody in my small group, I don't remember what the question was, but it was when we were using words to describe ourselves. And I used the word authentic because I said, how you see Camry right now is how you're going to see Camry tomorrow and the day after that and yesterday. And I think if people keep that in mind of having a purpose behind what you say and having passion behind it, that first of all, that stigma of that angry Black woman, whoever you're talking to shouldn't have that stigma anyway. And if they do, for example, I just have so many examples. Anyways, I had someone who posted on my professional Facebook page, my news Facebook page. And I had posted about, I'm pretty sure you guys are all here in Nebraska, so you guys know about Officer Herrera, who passed away in the line of duty. I had been posting about him because I had been doing stories on it. And someone, and I am assuming, and I don't like to assume, but I am assuming that this person is Black based off of what they said. So they came on my Facebook page and they said, how dare you support blue lives when Black lives are being destroyed and you sit back and you do nothing about it. Then the person went on to say, I hope your ancestors are proud at what you're doing. So they caught me on a lovely afternoon because I could have very well deleted it and ignored it and said, off with you. But what I did instead of doing that is I educated them. So what I did when they said I was sitting back and doing nothing, I went on 10/11 and I sent them every single story that I have done on the recent Black Lives Matter movement or the recent social injustices going on. Then on top of that, I said all of these stories that I've done, and I maybe sent them about 8 stories. And said on top of these stories that I've done, that does not account for the time when I was out getting tear gassed, reporting in the process of doing that, or going to events that I've gone to on my own without having to work them, just literally being involved in the community. And then I went on to say that, yes, I know my ancestors are proud of me, so thank you for saying that, because I am doing what they wanted us to do, and that was to continue to fight for freedom, and that is what I'm doing. So what I like to say is I don't like to call people out. I want to call you in. So I'm not going to clap back. I'm going to clap for you, because I am going to, you know, people like to say, how do you put people in their place? That's how I put you in your place. I put you in your place by educating you on what you're calling me out on. And I'm going to call you in and say, hey, if you want to have these conversations with me, have these conversations with me. If you want to experience this with me, come on, do it. Yeah. And so instead of me giving off that angry Black woman persona that can be given off, I give you, and it's funny, this happened, what, a week ago? The person actually just commented back on my post today. So it took you a week to decide what you wanted to say, and you didn't respond to anything that I sent back. You said something else. So I like to catch people off guard by how I come back at you, you know? And I don't want first of all, I'm the type of woman, I don't like drama. I don't like mess. If I could stay away from it for the rest of my life, I would love to do so. So with that being said, I don't want to invite that kind of negativity in my life. So if I can, you know, steer off from that and just bring you positivity or bring you education, that's how I'm going to do it.
So I hear two things, and we're gonna go into groups here. We'll go into groups, but I hear you say two things. One, the importance of keeping ourselves accountable and keeping others accountable. And in this race conversation, I think I know it's important is for all of you that have a voice and have gotten to know me, Camry, or somebody of color in this race conversation, feel free to use your voice to keep others accountable. And again, calling people out is easy. Calling people in is harder, where you say, hey, tell me a little bit more about what your thoughts are. Why did you say this? And that's what I try to do. Is it easy? Not necessarily, but we need to call each other in or out. So here's what I want to have the opportunity. And Camry, you might be in one of the rooms. I might pull you out. If you kind of disappear out of a room, that's because I'm pulling you out. But and one of the things that I would like to do is we're gonna give you about 3 minutes. And if possible, what I would like to do is come up with those that are in your room. What is one question about what we're having the conversation, what we have, either what we've said or we haven't said, that you want to ask Camry, or do you want to ask myself? In this race, everything happening. So again, I'm asking you to extend your hand, keep your values, your beliefs, but that's something that I don't like assuming either, but I think Camry is fully on to say, all right, we are here, ask away, and let's just put it out there. So you're going to go into rooms, Camry. I'll join you in a room here shortly, but I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and then we'll get ready to wrap up and call it a day. So here we go, 3 minutes, and here you go. All right, I was gonna say this should be coming back soon. Okay, so this is the first time we've done it in this setup. So I believe I had 4 or 5 groups. Here's what I would like to do. If you didn't pick a spokesperson, go ahead and feel free to shout their name first or something. But I know it always goes so quick. So here's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it up for, if you wanna use either the comment box or actually no, go ahead and if you already have a spokesperson, ask away. The floor is yours. So raise your hand who wants to go first and I will call. Becky, welcome. Go ahead and ask the first question.
Becky is one of my favorite people
Hi,
in Nebraska. I just like to say,
She
guys,
is awesome.
I'm one of Becky's biggest fans. I love this
Same.
woman. She doesn't know how much I actually adore
Aw.
her.
Me too. Thank you. That's so kind, Camry. My question for you and for Carlos, if you'd like to chime in, Carlos, is, and it's the group question, we kind of built it and then extended upon it. What are the places outside of your own safe home environment where you feel most safe and welcome in Nebraska, and what makes that place feel safe?
Go ahead. Woo.
Okay, so I just like a little disclaimer. So coming from New Orleans and being here in Lincoln, I automatically felt safe. Like, I'm like, you guys had one murder one year, and I'm like, I come from a place we have like 5 a day, so that's a little disclaimer. But wow, I love that question.
And you can use welcome instead of safe if it feels more authentic too.
For me, and thanks COVID, but where I did feel very welcomed and I felt very at home and very safe was my church. I quickly found a church here, and I walked in. The first person I spoke to turned out to be one of my sorority sisters, so she's in my same sorority. And then she told me that, hey, you're in a church where there's 10 other women here, and we're all in that sorority. So that connected me so fast. But besides my church, for me, and I hate to sound so, I knew she was going to say that, but the soul food places out here. When I talk to these people like Mary Ellen's, M&J's Southern Foods out here, I literally feel like I'm talking to my aunt or I'm talking to my uncle. And when I do go to places, and that's funny because, Carlos, we were kind of just talking about that. When I do go to places where I see people that look like me, and that's just an honest thing. And it's not like if you put me in a room with a bunch of other people that aren't African American and I'm the only one, I'm still gonna feel safe and welcomed, but you use that, where else do I feel home? That's not home. And those are those places. But just a place where people can be themselves. Because I've gone to, and I'm sorry guys, but I've gone to like a what do you call it? Like a Zumba class and a yoga class, and I felt safe and I felt welcomed, because that's a place where, hey, everything else goes out of the window. That's the same thing with church. So I feel like both of those kind of places do that for me.
Camry, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll answer, and whoever is next, just get ready to ask your question. For me, it's not so much of a place as much as it is relationship based. So I honestly would have to say that the family I have at Nebraska Community Foundation, connecting Nebraskans across Nebraska, where I've built relationships where I am seen as who I am and not just as a brown individual who might be, Democrat or independent or Republican, or I honestly feel on the lines of Camry, I can go to a lot. I feel safe in many places. I am careful with what's happening, but the places I feel the most safe and the most is where I'm allowed to be myself, and that's based on the relationships that I've built. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'd add on that, now that you say that too, and I mean, I don't know if this doesn't count, but I do feel safe and welcomed at my job. I've never second guessed that at all there. So
that's awesome. Thank you. All right, next group. Raise your hand and I'll call on you, or Stephen.
Okay, I'll try to summarize. I guess our group didn't technically come up with one question, but we kind of had a general theme. Kind of how do you respond to people that, whether it's, they're saying that, well, I'm not racist. I don't see that being an issue, or people, one example, somebody, they used to live in an area that was full of a lot of diversity and a lot of race, and they didn't see these issues popping up in that town. And now they live in the area here and they don't see race as an issue. Or even I've had one conversation about somebody said, well, you know, you should have been alive in the 60s and 70s. That was when race or problems were issues. We don't have those issues anymore. You know, all the issues have been fixed. So those kind of conversations, how do you address people when you're trying to have a conversation that those are kind of the initial responses?
Hey.
For me, it's more of, it's hard to change someone's mind, especially if they've been in that same mindset for years and a long time. It's not easy. And I mean, I'm coming from someone, let's say if I try to have my grandma see, you know, see something that younger people see now, it's hard. All you can do, I think, in those instances are try to educate them and say, hey, you may not believe it or you may not see it, but let me show you why, yes, it's still a thing. Let me show you why you should care about this. Let me show you, or let me introduce you to someone who's been affected by this. Let me show you this post on social media where this person explains their situation. That's a good question. That's a really good question, because it's so hard. I feel like there's not one way you can approach that. And it's hard to change someone's mind and someone's mindset. But for me, it's examples that may help, and examples that they can relate to. So if it's, I don't know, gosh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one.
We expected you to have all the answers, Cameron. Come on. Come on. No, you know, it is hard. It is hard. So a couple of things that I suggest is, you know, even asking, so why do you say that? Or why do you believe that? Tell me more. And getting people to tell you where does that come from and understanding, you know, I think there is a time to educate and share that. Sometimes you just let people kind of talk through it. And, you know, one of my questions for you, Camry, that you have to answer right now is, does Camry have biases, and what are they? But what I ask people, to your point of how do you have this conversation, and people say, well, I'm not racist. Well, some would say that just by saying I'm not racist, you probably have racist tendencies. You're just not aware of them, right? So we could really go in depth into that, which a good book I'd recommend is How to Be an Anti-Racist. There is a lot of good information here. I would suggest reading this book before you read White Fragility book. So that's the order that I would suggest. I know that there is there's been out there and there's been controversy on some of it, just because it has to deal with identity and other perspective about issues that matter. So the question that I like to use with people is, okay, who wouldn't your parents allow you to bring home to get married? You know, get them to think about that. That will uncover your unconscious bias. And then I asked the question of who wouldn't you allow your kids to get married? That would uncover your conscious bias. So yeah, people might not be racist or prejudiced, but we all have that tendency. So hopefully that helps a little bit on your question. So next group, what question do you have?
Sorry, Carlos, I know I talk a lot, but I would, now that you just said that, I would like to share a little experience with you guys.
Yeah.
So this was in high school. And like I said, my mom is Black, my dad is Black. And it was one night, and I won't ever forget, it was homecoming, and I was getting dressed, and somebody rings the doorbell. It was my date. And so my dad comes and he's like, Camry, I think someone's at the door for you. I don't know. Mind you, my date, which eventually turned into my boyfriend, not current boyfriend, but ex-boyfriend, he was white and Hispanic. So, but on the outside, he appeared just to be a white male. And so my dad, you know, and I purposely did not tell my father that the person I'm going on this date with is white, because not that my parents, just like you said, Carlos, not that they're racist, because they're not. My parents are some people that can talk to any and everybody. Not that they have those prejudices, but it was just, it caught them by surprise. You know, they were expecting a Black man to show up to my door, and that's not who showed up to the door. So I would like to say what you said is true. Ask them why they think that way and where that's coming from. And then you will maybe understand a little bit more their insight on that topic or that issue, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So again, we all have them. We have about 5 minutes. So I want to get to the next questions and then just get close to closing up. So who is the next group and what is your question?
Teresa, do you want to go ahead and take it?
She's been voluntold. Awesome, Teresa.
Hey, how are y'all? Actually, I have already sent a chat to Dale because he had just talked about one of my personal issues, and my husband is, as we encounter this all over our rural community. Not all over, I don't want to sound like it's an epidemic, but it is. There is so much, there's such an incredible lack of awareness. There's such a, my dad would say, head in the sand. Just, and for us, we bring it to each other. I mean, my husband has written up a colleague at the bank where he works because it was awful, and he refuses to let that, I'm so sorry, daughter. So what can my biggest thing is, our challenge is, how do we raise that awareness, bring up the topic, and help others around us in our predominantly white, conservative, rural towns to just be more open. And I had admitted to my two fellow, thanks Sarah and Dale, that inviting people like Carlos to come speak at leadership events is part of it. But the how do you start the conversations? Dale was sharing some of his work with the Community Foundation too.
Yeah, so,
I would just add that on top of what Teresa was describing in our little gathering, that I felt like more opportunities to build relationships and figuring out ways to create invitations for these relationships, because I found in my experience that is the most effective way to break down some of these conscious and unconscious barriers. And obviously the unconscious barriers are the ones you have the best chance of working on. A conscious barrier is one step deeper, or conscious bias. And so, we work where we're willing and where we're allowed to work. And these are difficult questions that we're not going to solve overnight. But I agree with all of you. I'm sure that it's definitely a need, and it's something we don't want to turn our eyes away from.
Definitely, and one of the things, again, is the exposure, is the willingness to be there. And one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning, just remember, this work is non-closure. It's a continuous work. So we sometimes have the urgency to bring closure, to fix it, right, to be done. But this is a non-closure developmental work journey. We have a couple more minutes. Who else has, raise your hand, who else has a question? I think we have maybe one or two groups left. If not, I don't see hands. Last burning question? No? All right, so here's what I want to do. I did change the format a little bit, but the slide doc is in the, that I shared on page 15. We were going to do an activity, and again, feel free to use this work. But on page 15, I want to share something with you. This is my cafe journey, because I love coffee. So go to a cafe and have a conversation. But what do you do? What do you build? How do you build these skills? One, know your identities, know who you are. It is important to ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Know your biases and be intentional. And here's the cafe. Cafe is for contact your cultural other. If we're talking about race, find those identities that you feel you have a bias. Start with the question, who wouldn't your parents allow you to bring home? Explore that cultural group, and like Camry said, go to a Black Lives Matter rally. Go with a Black person and experience that make a contact. Make a contact. The A is for action. Go and have coffee together. Volunteer with your cultural other in something together, and just to experience something. Pause your judgment. Remember, you're holding your values and your beliefs up here. Doesn't mean you let go of them. They're there. F, focus on learning and developing new skills and points of view, something that you know. And finally, E, it's empathy. Practice understanding others from their perspective. So you can go back, and we were going to do an activity to go there. I'm going to pass it on to Carrie. Before that, Camry, thank you so much for the opportunity to have an honest conversation. And this has been always, again, we understand this is your point of view, your lived experience, and for allowing people and leaders across Nebraska to say, okay, we want to keep having this conversation. If you are interested in her information, we can sure share that. You have my information as well, and would love to host some these types of conversations in your community. Carrie, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Camry. You guys were wonderful. My only thing is please register for our upcoming summit. I put the registration link in the chat. Pass it on to other people that you think should be there, like having conversations like this, enjoy just having other really meaningful conversations with people all across greater Nebraska. It's going to be awesome. It's only $20. And the first 150 people that register are going to receive a very cool package in the mail with all kinds of goodies from Valley County as part of their registration. And the final thing I'll add is that CYN is, part of Nebraska Community Foundation, a nonprofit organization. We depend on donations. Right now, we have a challenge grant issued from Nebraska Community Foundation. Any donation that you make, $5 becomes $10. So you can add it right to your registration. We would greatly appreciate it. It means we get to keep doing awesome programs like this and like the summit. So appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being here, and stay tuned for our next session. And another round of applause for Camry and Carlos. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. We will have this recorded and it'll be posted on the CYN. So feel free to visit actually the 3 previous ones and this one. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just
yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
tell everybody, thank you so much for, like I said, listening and being willing to learn and being willing to listen. That is what, and at this point, I'm speaking for everyone. All Black people, that is what we want. We want you to be in these conversations. We want you to listen, and we want you to spread it about. So however you feel like you need to spread it in communities, do so. Have those conversations. Make it uncomfortable. It will help, I promise.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Yay. Great job, Carlos.
Good job, guys.
As always.
Whew.
Yes. Excellent.
No, thank you. Yeah, hold on. Let me